Hey, everybody, it's Ryan. Thanks for downloading today's show. And just a reminder, as always, Wake Up War Chant is brought to you by our friends at For the Table, Madison Social, Central and Township, in the heart of College Town. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, welcome to a Renegade Express end-of-year edition of Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. You're currently listening to the voice of Ryan Kelly. I'm the director of digital media at warchant.com. We got some good questions of yours to get to. With the last show of the year, we figured as a thank you to you for being with us all year, we would turn over as much of the show as we could to you. So you're going to hear some basketball question later to our own Adrian Crawford as we preview the Duke game. And as always, we're going to do everybody's favorite segment at the end of the show. Gene Williams going to join us for Lucky 7. But in the meantime, let's get to your football questions with Mr. Ira Schafel, fresh back from Shreveport, Louisiana. Ira, I hope you're staying warm.
Yeah, well, we got back to Tallahassee. It wasn't a whole lot better, but yeah, we're doing good. It was a good trip, and glad to be back.
All right, let's rapid fire through these because we don't have a lot of time, but we do have a lot of questions. Bo Knowles wants to know, speaking of Shreveport, if you had to spend all of 2018 in Shreveport or a North Korean prison camp, which one and why? Wow,
I guess I'm going to go with Shreveport, yeah, I think for the obvious reasons. But if there was a curtain number 3, I think I might go with that one.
Curtain number there. So you're saying the North Korean prison camp is the Zonk? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely the Zonk.
Okay. Landon Knowles 09 wants to know, what's realistic expectations for FSU next year in terms of wins and losses? Are we talking about, is this a team that has to have a 10-win season to be successful? Does it have to win the ACC? What's success for the first year of the Willie Taggart era as we sit here right before the new year?
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to watch. You know, I think that when you look at this schedule, it's going to be a challenge. I mean, they've got a road trip to Notre Dame. They got Florida and Clemson, obviously. You got Miami, who's coming around. You know, Clemson obviously has become a perennial power now, and it's going to be a challenging schedule. So I have a hard time saying that they've got to, be a playoff team or anything like that. But I think 9-10 wins and just be sharp. I think there's enough talent that's not unreasonable.
Be a factor in the Atlantic. Don't necessarily win it, but be a factor in the Atlantic. And I think a lot of that depends on, since Florida State and Clemson are more than likely going to play later on in the year, how does Clemson look early in the season? Because that's going to shape a lot of people's expectations of what's possible in that season. So at least be a factor in the division. And you have to win one or two of those marquee games. Virginia Tech on Labor Day night, at South Bend, like you mentioned, and, of course, a rematch with Miami down there in South Florida. You should be a more talented team than Florida. I would imagine that would probably be a win. But overall, I'm with you. I think a 9-10 win season is successful. And I also think it can be a sliding scale, like I said, depending on how the rest of the ACC looks.
Yeah, I agree. And, and again, I don't know that there's a – if they win 8 games, I don't think it's the end of the world or anything like that. But I think that for people to be excited after next season, I think, they'd like to see about 9 wins. And then, and again, just kind of, some of the things we've talked about that people are excited about just in terms of the tempo and the excitement on offense and the team playing fun and loose, those things we've seen these last couple of games, that carrying over, I think, would be just a big thing.
Our friend David Blair wants to know from the Tribal Council, who will be the quarterback next year, if you had to guess right now?
Man, it's so hard to say. And it's funny. We had a thread, I did the story about the quarterbacks after James Blackman won MVP and just saying how that set the stage for the quarterback battle next year. And it's just funny. Like, half the people were like, oh, there's no contest. It's definitely going to be Francois. And then the other half of the people were like, oh, it's no contest. It's definitely going to be Blackman. So I just think it's if Francois is healthy, I think he'll end up being the guy. But that's still a bit of a wild card. We don't know if he's going to be healthy and when he'll be healthy. And because of that, I think, it's really up in the air.
Speaking of which, a follow-up question. Fishing Noel 8710 on Twitter wants to know, any chance Taggart would use them both?
That's a good question. I'd have to go back and look and see if he's done much of that before. I wouldn't think so. It's not like it's not like they're so diverse in terms of what they bring to the table. So I would say probably not. But again, a lot of it's going to depend on Francois' health. And if he's healthy, I think he gives you a lot. He's got the running ability and some other things. I think he might be the guy. But then again, I think Blackman showed when they simplified things late in the season. I thought he showed some of his true talent as well.
Sticking with Twitter, NB Ty wants to know, and I love this question, what do you think happens to the third, fourth, fifth string guys at running back if Jacquez Patrick decides to stay another year?
I don't think much happens this year. I mean, those guys especially the guys that redshirted, Zaquandre White and Kalen Laybourne. You've already sat out a full year. It's a lot to just say, oh, okay, I'm going to transfer and sit out another full year right now. So I think they'll stay, and I think they'll, try to work their way in there. I think one thing I think that might be appealing about Willie Taggart's offense is whether it be getting guys passes in the flats, whether it be guys lining up as slot receivers. I think there's going to be more opportunities to get the ball than just as the tailback in the base offense.
All right, next question. Why don't we go on out with this? Bowdenlaw wants to know, injury-wise, what's the status of Laybourne? Is Rice okay? And will Josh Brown finally see the field next year?
Well, Laybourne, he was in. There was so much confusion about his status in Shreveport. He was there for the first couple of days. He was. It sounds like he was sent home. And I think that my guess is he's going to have a long talking to with Coach Taggart and the coaching staff when he gets back and at the end of the Christmas break. And I think they'll probably. My guess is it's one of those things where he might have a lot of discipline, a lot of running, things like that. I don't know exactly what he did. I don't think it was anything terrible, but I just think that they were not happy with his behavior out there, so they sent him home. And but I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be back with the team, and they'll just kind of have to work through that. As far as Emmett Rice, the injury looked bad, but we haven't heard anything definitive yet. And this is always a tricky time of year because it's not like we're going to meet with Willie Taggart or Odell Higgins in a couple days. They're now getting ready to get back into recruiting and things like that. So it may be a little while before we know for sure. But it certainly didn't look like a good injury. And who was the other person?
And will Josh Brown finally see the field next year?
Oh, I definitely think so. I think Jacob Pugh, because of the way they played defensively this year, so many times they would go with the extra defensive back the last couple of years that there weren't that many snaps for even Jacob Pugh, who's a starter. Now that he's graduated, I think, you'll see Josh Brown a lot at linebacker. Now, we will have to see what scheme they go with this new coaching staff, but I think you'll see a lot more Josh Brown.
All right, Ira, I will keep on rolling with some of these. How about this? Why don't we roll with – it's funny because Gene wanted to know if we had any questions on assistant coaches when we interviewed him last night. And you're going to hear him a little bit later because he'd like to tackle him. And then, of course, as soon as we get done with that interview, we get a ton of questions. Who's the coordinator? Who's the coach? So I will ask you, Ira, your thoughts maybe on some of the coaching searches going on for FSU.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I mean, it's hard to kind of put your finger on it. I think there's been so many reports that I think I guess you would describe as preliminary. Whereas maybe the coaching staff or Willie Taggart was interested in somebody. But, I think a lot of those were speculative and a lot of those haven't come through yet. I think my guess is it's not going to be announced until after these next few games. I mean, I think that probably by early next week, if not this week and then early next week, I think it's going to come into focus. I mean, I think the sure things are, I think Ron Dugan's a wide receivers coach. I think that, just seems like that's probably – definitely going to happen. The DB's coach is up in the air. Defensive coordinator still sounds like it's up in the air. And when I was in Shreveport anyway, talking to people there, it didn't seem like anybody had a real strong sense for what was going to happen there. And then, once those fall into place, I think everything else will fall into place because, that part of where some of these guys are going to coach is going to be dependent on who the coordinator is and what position that guy coaches.
Finally, Ira, we have a couple more questions that I think we could probably make some segments out of next week. So thanks, everybody, for your questions. But the final one that we're going to ask today is from Knowles Braves Jags. What fundamental changes does Taggart want to make in the strength and conditioning program? Because above all, and this is no shot on Vic Floria, who by all accounts has been a solid guy inside this program, but based off the number of injuries over the last couple of years for FSU, something's got to give.
Yeah, people a lot of times will blame injuries on strength and conditioning programs, and sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. I think that, a lot of times the biggest thing about a strength and conditioning coach is there are some fundamental philosophy things they're looking for. And a lot of times it's the guy who's got the best relationship with the players, because the strength and conditioning coaches usually have the most time with the players of anybody. They get them in workouts during the week. They get them in the off season. A lot of times when the coaches can't be around, the strength coaches are the ones who are there. So I think it's going to be somebody that Taggart trusts and is going to share his same message and beliefs. I don't know exactly. There are a couple of different schools of strength and conditioning coaching. Vic Floria came through the guys at LSU and kind of was and that's what Jimbo liked about him, because he kind of taught that style. But, I'm not exactly sure if Willie Taggart's going to bring the guys that have been with him before, but I assume it's going to be guys he trusts and deliver the same message. I don't know exactly how different the changes will be, but I do think talking to some former players, they felt like these last couple of years at FSU strength, just the strength development wasn't as strong as it needed to be. And so I think that's something that you may see them focus on a little bit more in power and strength, and not as much in agility and quickness.
Ira, we couldn't get to everything, but I tell you what, let's come back next week and try to knock some more of this out. Adrian Crawford talks hoops and answers one of your questions after this as Wake Up War Chant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Thanks again for your football questions. We appreciated answering those. And now it's time to turn our attention to basketball. By the way, conference play starts tomorrow. 2 p.m. tip, CBS game. Not every day the Florida State Seminoles get themselves a national CBS game, but that's what we have, a national television opportunity against the Duke Blue Devils to open ACC play. It's as big an ACC opener, at least on the road, as I can think for Florida State in a long time, because it seems like whenever Florida State has these big openers, they're usually at home on the Tucker Center, and this is a really big test for the Noles away from home in as tough an environment as you could ask for in college basketball. Of course, our friend Adrian Crawford now joins us on the phone line. Adrian, did you ever think that this game might mean this much this early?
You know what? Going into the year, I did not. I mean, I knew it would always, a Duke basketball game is always going to be an important game, for any team in the ACC, because normally they're going to be one of the top teams in the league. But I did not expect for us to be playing at the level we've been playing at, and then kind of going in with this kind of really big matchup as the first game in conference play.
And with a national opportunity here, with America watching a 2 p.m. tip, of course, you got that and some bowl games going on. It's a good Saturday if you are a college sports fan. But before we get really into breaking down Duke, we did actually get a question from our friend High Horse over on the Tribal Council, the Seminole Hoops Board, actually. And he asked, most ACC teams posted impressive win-loss records during the out-of-conference slate. How do you tell? Hard to tell how we might match up and end up in the conference. We're obviously better than so many dismal preseason projections with so many contributors. What's the best guess on how many wins we should chalk up? Now, that's a tall order, especially because of the beginning of that ACC slate. We've talked about it before. It's Duke, Carolina, Miami, Louisville, and then, it's the ACC. It can only get so much easier. What do you think, in your mind, is a success for conference play, Adrian? And in the end, how many wins do you think Florida State ends up with in conference play?
It's a very good question. I'm more like, I know I doesn't seem like I'm dodging the question, but I kind of, instead of going more of going with how many wins, I think I'd rather go with where I think we'll finish in the conference. Because, again, I think just night in, night out is just so tough in this league. You got an upper echelon, you got a Duke basketball team who's going to be, really, really good. But besides that, it's going to be a little bit of everything. I actually think that we're going to be looking at either the third or, I actually think we'll finish within the top, 5 in the conference this year. I think if we finish top 5 in the conference, I think Leonard Hamilton should be looking at Coach of the Year. For just the dismal predictions we have, but I actually think that we will finish top 5 in the conference. So I know I'm kind of dodging the win-loss question, but it's kind of hard because, again, I just think we're going to beat everybody. Everybody's going to get beat up. So we just never know where it's going to land. But I actually think we'll be a top 5 team, one of the top 5 teams in the conference.
I'm willing to say that, honestly, in this ACC, if you go 500 in an 18-game slate, especially one that you draw Notre Dame, one where you draw Duke and Carolina, and I still want to see a little bit more out of Miami. And that's more a personally me thing. That's not me trying to knock Miami. I just haven't seen enough of the Canes to know exactly where they fit in. I know they're very highly ranked, but I think if you're Florida State, you're looking for about 9 to 10 wins in this campaign. And sometimes that's easier said than done, because sometimes that assumes that you're winning the games where you're the better team, and that doesn't always happen in college basketball. That assumes winning a game on Chestnut Hill against Boston College. That assumes a home game against Georgia Tech. That assumes going into Castle and beating VT. That assumes some of those things that you can't necessarily assume. But I would tend to think that anything below 500 is going to be a dismal disappointment, which is why I think the floor for what you should expect as a Florida State fan is 500 basketball. I think it ends up a game or two above that, but I think sitting around that 10, 11 win, that's about the threshold that I would be looking for.
Yeah, I could go with that. And again, I think it's going to be that because I think people are going to beat each other up. I think Duke's the best team in the conference I think it's just a talent perspective. I think they're the best team in the conference. And I think, honestly, from Notre Dame to Florida State to Louisville to Carolina, you got a Boston College team at times playing well. You got an NC State team. You're going to be I think teams are going to be beating each other up. And so I would agree with you. It's probably going to be a 500 type of ball game, but I still think it's going to be one of the, the top, probably in the top 5 in the conference. And like I said, I think we're good enough. I'll be honest with you. I think we're good enough to be the second best team in the conference. I think if you hadn't just, if I was putting my own money down, I'm going to say for sure I think it's Duke. But again, this Florida State basketball team, because again, they can just flat out defend. They have length, and they're scoring at such a high clip right now. I think that's what makes this team really special.
And I tend to agree with you there that they can finish as high as second. I think you'd be crazy to put anybody ahead of Duke, and I might mean that for all of college basketball. Despite that loss to Boston College, they're clearly just as talented as anybody. They're well coached, obviously, with Coach K on that sideline. And that's the team you're going to have to play on Saturday. So how stiff of a test? Because it's like I said at the beginning, whenever Florida State opens in one of these out-of-conference games, whenever it's a big one, it always seems to be at home. Adrian, can you remember an out-of-conference test on the road as stiff to start conference play as this one is?
No, I don't. I think this is probably, at least I would say, the Leonard Hamilton era. I think this is the toughest one. Because, again, you're talking about a Duke basketball team that is, I think one of the most talented teams that we've seen in college basketball in the last 5 years. Very talented basketball team, led with Marvin Bagley. And, when you're looking at a guy like a Grayson Allen kind of being like your third option, third option on a team who's a guy who's an all-ACC guy, potential player of the year guy, and he's like your second or third option on that team, that just lets you know how talented they are. I was looking at the other day, with Gary Trent Jr. and Trayvon Duval, Marvin Bagley, Wendell Carter, and Grayson Allen, you've got 5 guys in a recent mock draft I look at are potential that are in the first round. So, I mean, they're just a really talented basketball team. So I think it's one of the toughest, conference game openers we've ever had, especially on the road.
Last year, one of the big things that Duke was able to do against Florida State, especially in their victory at Cameron Indoor, they were one of the few teams in the country that could negate Florida State's height advantage. They were tied with the Seminoles for average height of their players. What is the length right now of Duke, and is Duke going to be able to neutralize that as well as they were a year ago, especially with Chris Kamaje more than likely on the sidelines for this game?
Yeah, yes, they will. And I think that's the one thing that concerns me about this game. Is because, I mean, you go with Marvin Bagley, 6'11", you go with Wendell Carter, 6'11", 7 foot. I mean, and then you're coming off the bench, I believe Bolden, I think it's the kid's name, you're coming off the bench with another 7-footer. I mean, they are long and they have great length. And when you look at it right now, this Florida State team, I mean, you have Ike Obiagu, who's a 7-footer, but then you're going with, from there you're going with Phil Cofer, he's 6'7", 6'8" in the book, probably 6'6" on a great day. You have Fiondu, who is about 6'7", 6'8", I mean, great length, wingspan. You got Terrence Mann, 6'6", 6'7". You're not coming off with a lot of length, especially losing Kamaje. So I actually think this could, negate a lot of what Florida State does. I think eventually could hurt Florida State because now, you're going to be in a situation where Florida State's got to, we can jump into this in a minute, but they're going to have to really make shots and make those big step out guards.
It's all about who's going to be more comfortable in this game. More than likely, Duke's going to have that advantage, obviously playing at home. So for the Seminoles, your key outside of the defense, your key offensively in this game, is it just a matter of getting those breaks and making those shots? Who's the guy that you feel like has to step up out of this whole Florida State roster if Florida State wants to escape this with a victory? Because this is going to be a war any way you look at it.
I think, and again, I don't want to be cliche. I think everybody is going to really have to be a team effort. But I would say if I was looking at one guy who I think, or two guys I would say really have to play, then I would say it would have to be Phil Cofer and I think Terrence Mann. And the reason why I say that is because one of the things that Florida State has had success against Duke in the past is that Duke plays that pressure man-to-man defense. And so what Florida State has done in the past, even in the days of Al Thornton, in the days of Luke Laux, and in the games, in the epic game where he makes a pass to Michael Snare, that we spread Duke out. And we make them have to guard us. That's the thing with Duke. Duke wants to Cameron Indoor. The thing about playing in Cameron Indoor is that what plays the way Duke plays is that how they shrink the floor, and they play. They press out. They're denying the passing lane, but it's so loud in there that you end up playing fast and you play tight. And that's what they want to do. And what Florida State's been great at, they spread them out. And I think that Phil Cofer is going to have to make shots because early on Duke will start off in man. And if we're making shots, we're going to have to pull those bigs out and make them guard ball screens. That's what killed Duke against Boston College, is that Wendell Carter and Marvin Bagley are going to have to at some point guard a stretch four. And so what teams were doing, what Boston College did a great job of, is they spread them out and they ran a lot of ball screens away and they made those bigs have to guard. And then that's when Duke went to the 2-3 zone that they like to run, that they had to run against Florida, that caused Florida nightmares. Because what they'll do is that they can't guard. And so, but if we are making shots, if Phil Cofer isn't going and they can play man, it's going to be a long day for us. But I actually think we have a matchup, we'll cause a little bit of a matchup problem, but when I say that, you got to go to the other end, and we got to figure out how we're going to match up with Wendell Carter and Marvin Bagley.
With the height of those guys, I don't know how big of a role that C.J. Walker is going to have in this basketball game, just because of the height advantage that Duke's going to have over him compared to especially a lot of the other guys on that roster. But I will say this, because I agree with you on the surface that it's Cofer and it's Mann, but I need, especially for the rest of conference play, not necessarily even this Duke game, but looking past it, I need C.J. Walker to get going a little bit. He looked a little rough towards the end of out-of-conference play. Of course, had that really bad game against Oklahoma State, and he is one of those key cogs that I think has made Florida State look a lot better than maybe some of the pundits thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. How important is it for him to start conference playoff hot and maybe not have a superstar takeover game against Duke, because I don't think the matchup calls for it. But I think in those first couple games, this really important first 4-game stretch, how important is it for him to get going and kind of lead those guards back into a rhythm?
I think it's incredibly important. I think you hit it right on the head. I think CJ has got to be a guy who is ready to come out, ready to play, using his intensity. I mean, he's the emotional leader of this basketball club, and I think he's got to be ready to go. But I think CJ's got to understand that if he's not making shots, that he's got to be able to distribute, defend, do other things. Right now, what happens when he gets in the rough patches when he's out there playing and he's not making shots, and so when he's not making shots, he's not defending, and when he's not defending, he kind of is not giving us a whole lot. But he's got to learn that he's not making shots, that his defensive presence, his toughness, like I said, he's on my all-street fight team. He has got to be the guy that brings the bout to him. And I actually think he's going to play a major part in this Duke game, because I think Duke's got a great point guard and trades Bond Duval, but he's a freshman. And I think C.J. Walker is the type of guy defensively that can really, him and Trent Forrest can cause some problems. But C.J. Walker is key and crucial for this whole ACC season because of the emotional leader he is. And when he's playing well, the team is dialed in, and they're all dialed in. And so I think that he's got to, and I think the biggest thing for CJ is just letting the game come to him. I thought in Oklahoma State, he started to press really early. CJ doesn't do well. We don't do well as a team. We're coming down. We're not a dribble up, kind of Kyrie Irving, dribble up ball screen and try to score. We are a type of team that's, we're 3-4 passes in, 5-6 passes in one possession to get the shot we want. It's not just good shots, but great shots. And I think if CJ can sit with that, I think he's going to be huge for us this whole year.
How do you see it shaking out, Adrian?
I think that it's going to end up being, I think it's hard to say, but I'm probably going to give the nod to Duke. I just think that playing in Cameron with this team, I think without having Tamaje, that really does hurt us, because I think that when I watched Duke early in the year, one of the things that gets them back in games against Florida is they just threw the ball inside to Carter and Bagley. Those guys are just really good. I mean, again, Marvin Bagley, he's one of them. I think he's a guy who has, he has, Hall of Fame basketball talent. And I think, he's one of those guys like how Anthony Davis was, where you just watch him and he's just different than everyone else. And so I think that we're going to struggle with that, because, besides Ike Obiagu and, and we're going to have to really work the front. So I think it's going to probably go to Duke unless Florida State comes out. Now, if Florida State comes out and they're really making shots early, if we make shots early, we're going to be in the game. But if we don't make shots early, and again, I would say this, the two keys are going to be this: do we get the ball moving early? And are we making shots? If we come down and we get caught into the Duke Cameron kind of craze of just dribbling down, chucking up shots at the basket, no good flow, no ball reversal, we may get beat by 15 or 20. But if we come in and we let this thing kind of flow and we make shots early and get the ball going and play Florida State basketball, we're going to be in the basketball game. But if I had to give a nod, I'm going to probably give it to Duke.
I tend to agree with you. I think Duke ends up with this one, but I think your point is absolutely valid, because it's so proven. It does not take a basketball genius to tell you that anybody who lets the emotions of the moment, the first 5-10 minutes at a game in Cameron Indoor Stadium, anybody who lets that get the better of them, they are more than likely sunk. Unless you are just a extremely elite national championship level team, it's hard to dig yourself out of that. And that's what it's going to have to be. Can you make shots early? Can you be aggressive? I agree with everything you just said there. But before I let you go, Adrian, we've been talking basketball on the air, between the War Chant Report, between radio, between all that, for 3 years now. And I've heard you mention your all street fight team so much. And I have to ask you, who is on the all-time now? Like, if you're putting together any era, your starting five for your all-street fight team, who is it?
Are you talking? Okay, so are you talking about Florida State? Or are you talking about?
It can be anybody.
Wow. All street fight team. Man, well, I feel like I feel like the Memphis Grizzlies had the all-street fight team, like, recently. I mean, definitely Tony Allen's all-street fight team. If I'm in a fight, Tony Allen's about that life. I mean, it's no game when it comes to Tony Allen. Some of these guys we call them, they're basketball tough. Tony Allen's real life tough. He's on an all-street fight team. I think, as well, I'm going to go with, I'm going with Charles Oakley as well. As you saw last year, you know, Charlie, it's like the video games. Charles Oakley hands are ready to eat for everyone, you know. So Charles Oakley is on my all-street fight team. I think I would have to go with, you know, Bill Lambier will be on my all-street fight team. I mean, I think he's a guy to be on there. I would try to think who else I would go with. I would maybe have to add a Matt Barnes on my all-street fight team. You know, Matt Barnes is one of those guys, and I probably may have to end with a Zach Randolph. I know I've used some recent guys, but those guys right there would be on my all-street fight team right there. These are guys, man, if there's a fight that's happening in the streets, these guys are about it. These are guys you want to go to war with. So, Florida State era, though, I'll say this. C.J. Walker, Phil Kofer, Al Thornton is on my all-street fight team. Maybe Alexander Johnson would be on my all-street fight team. Another guy played with Terrell Baker would be on my all-street fight team. So, those are my Knowles who I put on there.
No love for John Kreft?
Dude, yeah, John Kreft. Man, you're right. John Kreft, you know, I think John Kreft would be on my all-mercenary team. If I was putting a group of mercenaries together, I think I'd put him on there. So I think I'd put him on my all-mercenary team. So we're trying to do an invasion in Afghanistan. My man Kreft's on it.
I never had the pleasure of meeting or covering John Kreft, and everybody who ever did said that he was a nice guy. But John Kreft just had that look like if you walked into a room and you looked him wrong, you were going to catch some hands.
Yeah, John Kreft's one of those guys but John Kreft was one of those guys where he's such a nice guy. He's always pleasant, he's always great. But yeah, he just had that switch. Like you can look at John and realize, like, when that switch is turned on, it's hard to turn it off. Like, you know, some guys can control it. He was like he had that switch where it's turned on, then it's on. You know what I mean? It's like it's not going to take one guy. You know, it's going to take about 8 dudes. You know, come over there and, you know, and get him. You know, you have to do a lot to get him. But yeah, John Kreft he's definitely honorable mention. You know what I mean? You know, I will take Alexander Johnson off and replace him with John Kreft. That's a good call.
And the other guy, here's the thing. I get it. He served the country. He's a member of the Air Force. Let's not forget, Bernard James kicked a dude in the head.
He did. Bernard James, too. And I don't know if you've ever seen Bernard James on social media at times, but man, sometimes, you know, he puts up some of, you know, he'll show like pictures of like some of his, you know, I mean, they're all legal, so I want to make sure I say that, his weapons that he has from being in Afghanistan, Iraq, or whatever. Man, my man's got some Call of Duty type of weapons. I mean, I'm looking at these things, I'm like, man, that's the type of gun I want on Call of Duty. I can prestige with that.
Oh. That's good stuff, man. Adrian, we got to run, but thanks so much.
All right, man. Thank you.
We'll have to do 20 minutes just on that sometime, but hey, we'll take a break. We'll put a bow on this thing right after this. It's Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
All aboard the Taggart train! I'm really excited about FSU football and the Willie Taggart era.
Did you hear there's also a new era happening at warchant.com?
Did Warchant get a new coach?
No, but they did get a star player. Corey Clark is joining the team. Between Gene Williams, Ira Scheffel, and Corey, that's nearly 50 years of experience covering the Seminoles.
Glad I finally took advantage of that 30-day free trial offer and subscried.
And now you get the added bonus of reading Corey Clark's insight into the Noles.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Now you have to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky?
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
I need to feel you, Jerry. Show me the money. Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money.
Lucky 7 time, the last one of the years. We put a bow on it here on Wake Up War Chant 97.9 ESPN Radio. Ryan Kelly and the boss man, Gene Williams, joining us over the Skype line as we wrap things up. Gene, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good, man. Had a good Christmas. How about you, Ryan?
Had a great one. Good to be with the family. Good to have all that. And it's like I told you off air, spoiling the nieces is always a great thing. Mm-hmm. So I had the lucky privilege of playing video games with my daughters at the Dave & Buster's. We can give them a little plug. Had a good time there. Hey, there's nothing quite like spending a day at Dave & Buster's when you know you've got nothing to do and you've just got, especially at this time of year when it's cold out, there's nothing like just zoning out, playing some arcade. And they have a bar, which is nice. Also that, yes. And if you can play arcade games and drink, I think many of our listeners would say that's not a bad way to spend a Saturday. No, not at all. Not a bad way to spend your New Year's either. This weekend slate of games is really, really good. And I'll tell you what, Gene, let's start with one today, and then we'll pick the rest of the New Year's 6. But first, I feel like we would be a little remiss if we didn't pick the Belk Bowl. It's Wake Forest and Texas A&M in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Deacs are favored by 3. And this is one where I kind of raise an eyebrow talent-wise, but here's the thing. Coaching change, it's not exactly like Jimbo Fisher is going to put in a ton of his very, very complicated stuff in that quick a period of time. Clawson's as good a coach as there is. I like the Deacs to cover. Yeah, that's intriguing. It's like Jimbo Fisher can't get away from the ACC because he plays Clemson early next year at Texas A&M. So they gave him a hard time at Florida State. It's more or less a home game, I guess, for Wake Forest up in Carolinas. Like you said with Clawson, I like the coaching advantage for Wake Forest in this one. The coaching changes a lot of, as Jimbo likes to say, clutter at Texas A&M. So yeah, give me that. I'll give me the Deacons. Southern Cal and Ohio State are playing in the first New Year's 6 game of the year tonight. That's the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Texas. Buckeyes favored by 7.5 in this one. I don't like this at all. I think Southern Cal's going to win this game outright because if you look at Southern Cal over the last month of that season, they looked a lot better than that team that struggled against Texas. Give me the Trojans. Well, here's two things that jump out at me. When the team that just barely misses making the playoffs, they're disappointed. I mean, think about it. Look at Michigan last year. They came into that Florida State game. They were not very focused early on. Florida State kind of rolled, and they came back and made a game of it. But I think Ohio State's going to be in the same mindset. And plus, I hate that hook at the end of that 7 points. So I'm with you right there. Give me the Trojans to cover. I don't know if they win, but I think they will at least cover. We'll stick with the Pac-12 and Big Ten theme when at 4 o'clock on Saturday, December the 30th, Washington and Penn State play in the Fiesta Bowl. Nittany Lions favored by 2. This one is another one where I'll go with the Pac-12 team. I'll take Washington here, and I'll tell you the reason why. Coaching matters. I'll take Chris Peterson with a month over James Franklin. Ooh, I don't know. I like James Franklin. I think we differ on this one a little bit. I just think Penn State's a more better team. Washington had some very up and downs down the stretch in the Pac-12. So go ahead and give me the Big Ten in this one. All right. Speaking of the Big Ten, we keep rolling. It's Wisconsin and Miami in the Orange Bowl. Oh, this one's another one that's, I don't know. This is up in the air for me. It's basically a home game for Miami. It's going to be a very pro-Canes crowd. Wisconsin's favored by 4.5. I like Miami just because I don't really think Wisconsin played or beat anybody of any consequence this year. Yeah, that's one of those ones I know we always like to talk about when we do the show with Jeff Cameron. One of those ones we would never bet in our personal life. You just don't know in this one. Miami looked really bad down the stretch. I think everything kind of came to roost. They were exposed a little bit at the end of the year. They aren't nearly as good as they were rated there for a while. Wisconsin, they played one game and they lost in the Big Ten. But I don't know. Miami's faded so bad down the stretch, and when they lose games, they seem to lose them in streaks. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Badgers in this one to cover. What was the line, Ryan? 5? 4.5. 4.5. Yeah, I'll take Wisconsin to cover. I don't want to bet on Miami, so go with the Badgers. Yeah, that's one that I don't feel like either of those two are like absolutely incredible teams, even though they're in the top 10. But I think it's a fun style clash in that game. Rozier's going to need a good game if Miami wants to cover that 4.5 and win this game. But Miami's had all those injuries too, and I got to wonder Wisconsin will do that power game, and I wonder if they'll wear Miami down by the end of the game. All right, Peach Bowl. 12:30 p.m. January 1st, the appetizer before the playoff games, the Golden Knights. I know it's just the Knights now, Central Florida alumni. Save your emails. UCF, Auburn. Auburn's favored by 9.5. Auburn may very well win this game, or this very well may be that game that let down for the team that maybe thought it should have been in the playoff. But I'll tell you what, charge on that 9.5. I will take the Knights.
Man, this is one of those ones I just hate because there's so many weird variables. Auburn obviously just missing out and making the playoffs. Central Florida obviously having the coaching change going on there. There's just so much going on. But, man, you're right. I wish it was over 10. 9.5, but that is a lot of points. I'm going to guess Auburn, kind of like Florida State was a few years ago in that Peach Bowl where they were, came up a little bit short, had to play the non-Power 5 team, and were not motivated for this. So I think UCF's a little better than people give them credit for. So, yeah, go ahead and give me the Knights.
All right, Rose Bowl, Pasadena, California, 5 o'clock kick. The Georgia Bulldogs play the Oklahoma Sooners. If I'm not mistaken, this line opened with Oklahoma favored by 1, and it swung to Georgia by 1.5. I like where the public is thinking on this. This, to me, everybody knows I'm not the biggest Oklahoma guy, but I will say this. When you take all that away, if you're the Oklahoma Sooners with that defense, this is the one matchup you didn't want to see. I think that defense does enough to hold Baker Mayfield and that offense in check. I think the Dogs are going to win this game, and they're going to cover that 1.5.
I think the line shift because the stupid Georgia fans don't see reality and they just throw money out because they think they're always better than they are. I ain't buying that. You need a little bit of offense, and I think you got a freshman quarterback going against the best quarterback in the country. So give me Oklahoma all day in this one.
All right, here's one that's a little interesting. I know where your head is kind of at this. So the Sugar Bowl, 8:45 kick, ESPN. Clemson is playing Alabama. The Tide is favored by 3 in this game. I believe this opened as a pick'em, with the public, of course, betting on Alabama. Jeff Cameron, when we did the last War Chant Report, brought up a good point that the further along this game gets, the more it maybe favors Alabama. And I don't trust either of the quarterbacks in this game. However, I think I trust Kelly Bryant and at least the play calling to protect him a little bit more than I would trust Jalen Hurts. So I'll take Clemson in this game straight up.
I don't like that the line has shifted this way since we initially made this pick weeks ago. But I'll say one thing. I refuse to bet against Nick Saban with time to prepare unless he proves me otherwise. And I know Clemson's got – I think their defense is even probably a little bit better than Alabama's, but I think Alabama's got a little bit more on offense than Clemson. So this is going to be a great game. But at the end of the day, until he proves it otherwise, I'm not betting against Nick Saban. So go ahead and give me the Alabama Crimson Tide to upset – I guess not upset because they're favored now, even though Clemson is the number 1 seed in this thing. But go ahead and give me Alabama.
I think that's pretty funny. You've got the Tide and the Sooners meeting in the national title, and I have the Dogs and the Tigers meeting in the national title. So I think anyway, here's the thing, Gene, because I know we've got a sec and then we got to run. For the sake of college football, these games just need to be good. I don't care who wins. These games just need to be good because when you look at the last 3 years of semifinals, we've yet to have a good game. We've had a good national championship. We haven't had a good semifinal.
You know what we don't want to have, and I think TV would agree with this, is the Georgia-Alabama game because I think that would be a very regional contest, another one of those SEC. Wasn't one the lowest-rated championship game in the last, decade or two is that Alabama-LSU game a few years ago. So I think that's what TV desperately does not want to have happen.
Which is why I thought the committee at the end of the day would put in an SC or an Ohio State over Alabama simply because ESPN has a big hand in that and they want to make it not as regional when really, let's face it, 3 of those possible 4 teams all make that pretty regional unless the Sooners make it in. But
I was going to say, if you're a conspiracy theorist, wouldn't you say the Alabama-Oklahoma would probably get the best ratings? I mean, I would think that would probably bring the best national rating. So if that's your thing, then yeah, that's probably who's going to be.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, Gene, thank you so much, my friend. It's always appreciated.
Hey, Happy New Year, Ryan. Have a good one.
And a Happy New Year to everybody else. Thanks so much for listening to us. We will be back with you on Wednesday, January the 3rd. Until then, enjoy your family. Enjoy the football. Happy New Year. We'll talk to you soon. Golick and Wingos up next, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.